one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they send one email out a month and then they suddenly go into full-on crazy launch mode and they send 3 emails a day. And guess what? That's what spammers do. So Google starts to treat it like a spam and your emails end up in the spam folder.
Welcome to Show Me the Nuggets, where each week Joe chats with world-class entrepreneurs to find out the key principles, strategies, and processes that lie behind their outstanding achievements. Now, your host, the no bullshit serial entrepreneur, Joe Troyer.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Troyer, and welcome to another episode of Show Me the Nuggets. I'm super excited to have none other than Adrian Savage on the podcast today. We're really going to be talking about how to make sure that the emails that you send are actually getting delivered, ending up in the inbox so that they can do what we want them to do, to get opened and to get clicked and to take whatever action it is that we're looking for our audience to take. So for those of you guys that don't know Adrian, he's the founder of Deliverability Dashboard and also runs WeDelivered.email. And guys, this is something that I'm super excited to learn about. We do lots of cold email and opted-in email. I believe we do most of the basics, but I'm really just excited to pick Adrian's brain on what he sees is working and not working. So Adrian, man, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joe, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So you've worked with a lot of the top marketers, right? We've done our research. The team, as you said, has done their research. We know you've worked with people like Neil Patel and Eben Pagan and Ryan Levesque, and I'm sure many, many others. And we're going to get into all the juicy details of that. But before we do, let's step backwards, right? Let's step back in time and tell us a little bit about your background, not like the 10-minute, 30-minute version. Just give us a little abbreviated version. How'd you get started in like this crazy world of online marketing?
Well, I guess it all goes back to when I was 7, when my dad brought home the original Apple II computer. And that was my first kind of immersion into the world of IT. So I've been a geek since then, did the usual stuff, went to school, worked for people, quit my job. And then 10 years ago, I learned all about marketing automation. Some of my clients had problems getting their emails through, strangely enough, and I kind of couldn't help to start with. And then I started learning about this. I dug into it. That's how I created my WeDeliver software. And then over the last 2 to 3 years, it reached the point where the only thing it was worth me focusing on was email deliverability, because let's face it, there's very few people out there that look at this stuff in the detail that I do. And it's a really cool way of helping people because everyone wants to be heard more with their emails. Everyone wants to avoid the spam folder. So why shouldn't I just get into that? And that's what I did. And I really love it. It's the one thing that I used to listen to people say was, the money's in the niche, is where, the better focused you are, the more successful you're going to be. And guess what? It's been absolutely right. There's no coincidence that the last couple of years have been the best years in business for me. And so I love it. And it's something that actually helps me help people and helps me be successful.
Hey, real quick, before we dive into the rest of this episode, real quick, I promise my team and I would like to personally thank you, our audience, yes, you listening right now, for all the amazing support that you guys have been giving the podcast. The growth has been just crazy. And I want you to know that we're super, super appreciative to you. So we've been trying to think of something cool that we could do to give back to our audience, to give back to you guys. And I think we've come up with something that's really, really unique. It's something that's special. So here's the thing. The team here at Digital Triggers, my own little team here, has decided that we're going to give away a gift pack that includes our top of the line resources to sell SEO, right? We know that so many of you guys out there are agencies. This is going to literally give you contracts, proposals, pitches, scripts that you guys can use, outreach templates. It's a pack of assets and collateral for anybody wanting to sell SEO services or marketing services to any type of business, not just local businesses. This has been used to land e-com deals, all kinds of deals out there. So if you didn't hear that, let me make it a little more clear. Okay, our Digital Triggers family is giving you some of the best of the content and the resources that we've ever put together, absolutely free, just for listening to the podcast. Okay, all that you have to do is go to digitaltriggers.io/gift pack. and you are good to go. Folks, it is that simple. We'll make sure that this page is up and ready for you guys by the time this episode airs. And with that being said, let's get back to the episode. All right. That was all right. I think that went okay.
That's awesome, man. I mean, you think about how much money influencers or brands or just any company out there are spending on marketing. Obviously, if they can't get their message delivered, they can't get their email deliverable. It's not hitting the inbox. Obviously, that is a huge pain. So I gotta agree with you, man. Picking a niche, focusing on it. Absolutely. I can imagine that there's a severe pain that people are in when they come to you.
Well, the biggest thing, a lot of people is the ones that are spending a lot of money on advertising, paid for advertising. You're doing pay-per-click, whether it's Google, Facebook, whatever, then you might be spending maybe $5, $10 per lead sometimes. And then when I work with clients, we find that as few as 40% of those leads are engaging by email, when it's possible to get 80% of them to engage. So, effectively, it's possible to double the return on your marketing or your advertising investment just by nailing your email deliverability. So it makes it really important if you've got paid for traffic. And even if you're not paying for traffic, then you're still investing a lot of time, energy, everything else. And you just want as many people as possible to see those messages you're sending. Simple as that.
That's awesome. I'm really curious for selfish reasons, right? When you talk about engagement and that percentage, is that of everybody that opts in, or how do you really define that number?
Yeah, so one of the reports I've built into my dashboard tool is about looking at everyone who's opted in the last 30 days and what percentage of those have opened one or more emails in that time. And that's where it can be anywhere between, on the low side, I've seen 25 to 30%. On the high side, I've seen 85 to 90%. But you can get 70 to 80% as long as everything else lines up correctly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Do you ever back it out to individual emails and kind of open rates, or is your primary metric that you look at that number, the 30-day time span percentage of engaged?
Yeah, it depends how much into the weeds I'm going to get. Most of the time, it's the helicopter view that actually makes the difference, because how's everything performing at the big picture level? Because individual email campaigns, they'll come and go. Sometimes you get a good open rate, sometimes not so good. The subject line might be bad. You might end up in promotions because you've made an offer, whatever it is. But as long as you're sending enough emails out, then it's how things have performed over the last 30 days, over the last 90 days. Those are the two main things that I look at, because that's what the big mailbox providers are looking at as well.
So when it comes to email marketing, what have been kind of the biggest changes that you've seen in recent times?
I guess the biggest change, if we go back even 3, 4, 5 years ago, the good old days of email marketing, all you had to do was build a massive email list and then just email the hell out of it and keep emailing them until they buy, they die, they unsubscribe. And that was how old school internet marketers used to work. And that's how some of them still do. And then they wonder why they're getting a 3% open rate. But what's really changed more recently is that the big three email giants, we've got Google, we've got Microsoft, we've got Yahoo, they really did start to change the rules about 3 years ago. And now what they're looking at is a lot more, not just on how many emails you're sending and where's it coming from. They're looking at what's your individual reputation as a sender looking like, and what's the behavior of your audience. Are they mainly opening your emails, or are they mainly ignoring you? And if they're ignoring you, that's bad news, because your reputation is going to get downgraded.
So I know that best practice, people talk about cleaning your list all the time. Right? Yeah. Can you talk about what that means and why it's important?
So cleaning your list can mean one of a number of things, but the most important thing here is focusing on the engagement. And I know, when we spoke before the show, then, your guys have already worked out that engagement is really, really important. And when you're keeping your email list clean, the best thing you can do, the way you can help yourself the most, is just to identify who has opened your emails recently and just focus on them. If someone reaches, say, 90 days at the very most, then by that point, you must be considering whether you're going to keep them on your list or get rid of them. And in most cases, you're going to get rid. The only reason you might keep them on your list, if they've been unengaged for 90 days, is if they're a previous customer or something like that. Otherwise, you might just send them an email saying, hey, do you still want to stay on my list? It looks like you haven't been reading my emails. And then maybe a couple of reminders. If they ignore all of those, they're out of here. Simple as that.
Yep. That's really interesting. So about once a year, I feel like my personal email deliverability at Digital Triggers just takes a crap. Like once a year. And it seems like every time with just a couple of tweaks, right? I can take my engaged list and just super engage them for 2 weeks. And then it seems like my deliverability like fixes itself. And then it's like all well and good again. Is that normal? Is that like something I should be thinking about doing more proactively instead of reactively?
That's an interesting thing. So by that, you're saying you actually focus on the engaged people for a while, send the emails to them, and then everything kind of improves for a while after that.
Exactly.
So yeah, what I would tend to do is I would make that a much more regular practice, because the more you focus on the hyper engaged people, the more that's going to boost your reputation on an ongoing basis. So what I tend to recommend to people these days is, even though 90 days might be the cutoff, don't send all of your emails to the people in the last 90 days. Focus on the ones that have opened much more recently. It might be 30 days, it might be a bit different to that. But what I've been doing with my own list is I send emails pretty much every day now. And those daily emails, I'm only sending to the people that opened in the last 30 days. And then maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, something like that, I'll open it out and I'll send something to the 0 to 90 day people. But it is the tighter you manage that engagement, the better it's going to work on an ongoing basis.
That's really, really, really interesting. I've always found that like doing something kind of shocking, giving away a free course, something like that, getting massive engagement, getting replies back to the email as well, seems like it's always worked really well. But yeah, I've seen my open rates fall. I'd be at, let's say, consistently 20% plus open rates. And then like I don't do a promo or I don't mail for a week or two, and then I start mailing again, and it's like it just tanks. It's
Good.
like 7%, 5%.
Wow. Okay. We need to do something there then, because I mean, my list is not particularly huge. I've only got a few thousand on my list, and when I was mailing, not every single day, I was getting 40-50% open rates. When I started mailing on a daily basis, it dropped down to about 30%, and occasionally go up to kind of 35, 38. But the reason for that is because I'm managing the engagement so much. But the thing to bear in mind as well is that the mailbox providers love consistency and they hate change. So if you're not mailing on a regular basis, then you are going to find it's more of a challenge when you pick things up again. So, consistency is really, really important here. I know that we might talk about mistakes later on, but one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they send one email out a month and then they suddenly go into full on crazy launch mode and they send 3 emails a day. And guess what? That's what spammers do. So Google starts to treat you like a spam and your emails end up in the spam folder. So it is all about being consistent and just sticking to a particular rhythm. If you want to do daily emails for launches, then you need to kind of ramp up to sending more frequently than once a month before you do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense for sure.
Awesome.
Okay. Can you talk about the difference between email deliverability and inbox placement?
Okay, so yeah, this is a really, it can be a bit confusing because people use the word delivery, they use deliverability, they use inbox placement. And yeah, the main thing to bear in mind, and people don't always agree on the difference between deliverability and inbox placement even. So I'll use the 2 phrases that I use. We talk about delivery, and then we talk about deliverability, which is I see that as the same as inbox placement. So if we start with delivery, that's, supposing you're using, I don't know, MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, Infusionsoft, whatever. Their job, they only have one job, and that is to deliver that email to the recipient's mailbox provider. So that might be Google, Microsoft, whoever. So Infusionsoft will say to, suppose I'm sending an email from my Infusionsoft to your, I don't know, Gmail account. Infusionsoft will go knocking on Google's door and say, hey, we've got an email for Joe. Will you accept it? Yes or no? Google will say, yes, I've accepted it. And at that point, the email has been delivered. So, so just like, imagine the postman turning up and posting a letter through your mailbox. Now, what we don't know at this point is whether there's a dog waiting on the other side to run away and chew it up or not. And this is where the deliverability or the inbox placement comes into it, because once Google have said, yes, I'm accepting this email from Adrian to Joe, They're not promising to put it into your inbox. They're just saying that they've accepted it. Now, Microsoft are really bad at this. They will sometimes just toss it in the garbage, not even the spam folder. Happily, Google don't do that often. But then there's all kinds of other algorithms and factors that they've got to take into account before they decide, right, are we going to put this into the spam folder, the promotions tab, the clutter folder, the inbox, whatever it is. And they make that decision on every single email based on things like who it's come from, how it was sent, the content, the previous behavior that you as the recipient have made, all kinds of things. But the deliverability or the inbox placement is what the mailbox providers do with it after they've received it, after it's been delivered by MailChimp or whoever to them. Does that make enough sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Awesome.
So then if we narrow it down to just inbox placement, what are the big factors there? Like what's the 80-20, or if you applied 80-20 to itself, right? What's the 64-4? Like what's the primary metrics or the things that really matter in terms of good inbox placement?
So really there's 4 key areas that I've broken this down into, and they are reputation, authentication, content, and surprise, surprise, engagement, which we've already mentioned. And if you take those initials, that spells out the word race, so it's nice and easy to remember. But there's specific things on each of those.
Okay. Can we dive into race a little bit more? And
We certainly can.
Maybe like 1 or 2 of the top things, or whatever you think the top things are for each of them, for reputation, authentication, content, and engagement.
Perfect. Okay, so reputation, then there's 4 specific things that I cover there. If you ever call dibs on something when you were a kid, then it's a nice easy, dibs is the way of remembering this. So we've got domain reputation, and that is everything that you send from your domain. Then Google, Microsoft, Yahoo and co, they are tracking that reputation on your domain. And this matters a lot more than the next thing, which is the IP reputation. And that's obviously the reputation of the platform you're using, whether it's MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, or whatever. And these days, my best guess is that 80% of inbox placement depends on the domain reputation, and 20% or less is based on the platform that you're using. Because one of the questions I get asked these days is which platform is better for email deliverability? And the answer that I give is it doesn't really matter. Imagine, if you want to get fit and you're working out at a gym, if you go to a different gym and keep doing the same exercises, are you going to get any fitter? Probably not. And email platforms are the same these days. There's no point switching from one platform to another in the hope that your emails are going to get through, because they all do a pretty good job. But we got domain reputation, IP. Then the B stands for block lists. If you go and dive into Lake Stupid and maybe buy an email list or scrape addresses off the internet or something like that, or get lots of spam complaints, you're going to end up on a block list. So you don't want to do that. And the other thing you can do, which is the S, is you can mail a spam trap. And spam traps are something that need to be avoided at all costs, because if you send too many emails to spam traps, you will end up on the block lists again. And that's bad news. Do you want to mention quickly what a spam trap is at this stage?
Yeah, please, if you would.
Sure thing. Okay, so if you've not come across a spam trap before, then it's just a regular looking email address. You can't tell by looking at the email whether it's a spam trap or not. And there's 3 kinds. There's pristine ones, which are email addresses that have never existed legitimately. They're created by the spam trap operators to try and catch bad people. And they will publish these addresses on the internet. They'll wait for people to copy them down and start mailing them. Anytime you hit one of those, you've clearly been a very, very bad person, and you're going to end up on the block list. So don't touch those. I'm sure no one watching this will ever have collected email addresses off the internet. It's not cool. Then you've got the recycled spam traps, and they're addresses that used to be legitimate. It's like I once had a Hotmail address, and then I got rid of it. I switched to Google. So Microsoft will have disabled that Hotmail address, and anyone who mailed it would have got a bounce, and they would know that the email address doesn't exist, and you should stop mailing it. And again, if you're using something like MailChimp or whatever, they will automatically handle that. But then after about 3 months, those email addresses get reactivated. And if you keep mailing them after that point, then that's very quick demonstration to the mailbox providers that you are not keeping your list clean, because you keep mailing people that don't exist. So if you haven't mailed anyone for 3 months or longer, you might have missed that opportunity to actually get them identified as a spam trap. So that's why it's really important to keep mailing. But those are, the third type of spam trap is a spam trap where it might be Gmail is mistyped or something like that. And again, you can keep an eye on that by making sure that you're only mailing people that open your emails. So all of those spam traps, as long as you're not scraping stuff off, and as long as you're managing the health and keeping your email list clean and getting rid of people that don't engage and getting rid of people that bounce, then you're less likely to hit spam traps. But you need to know what they are. And that covers reputation. So quickly on authentication, this is around proving the emails that you send really came from you. Because if you've used any email marketing platform, you'll notice that it normally lets you choose whatever email address you want to send things from. You know, you could claim to be sending stuff from the president and the White House if you wanted, and no one can actually stop you doing that. So they started putting authentication out as a way of actually helping you deal with that. And the first thing that you need to check if you're using any kind of email marketing is to go into your platform and look for an option called email authentication. And the acronym, the buzzword for this is DKIM, which stands for Domain Keys Identified Mail. And it's just a way of digitally signing every email you send out. Make sure you've got that set up, and then make sure, secondly, you've got something called SPF set up, which is something you publish in your domain records, and that stands for Sender Policy Framework. That tells the world who you trust to send emails on your behalf. So supposing you're using, I don't know, ActiveCampaign, G Suite, and maybe you're sending emails from Help Scout for your help desk, you need to make sure all three of those platforms are listed in your SPF record. Otherwise, some platforms won't trust the emails that you send out. Then the last one is DMARC, which defines what to do if the emails don't pass authentication. You can tell it to completely reject those emails. You can tell it to put them in the spam, or you can tell it to do nothing. Set all three of those up, and that will give you the best chances of getting through, because the spammers can't do this. You can. This is how you differentiate yourself from the spammers. Anything you want me to explain more on that, or is that good enough before we move on?
No, I think that's good enough. Obviously, that's like the very technical bit.
Absolutely.
But I think we talk about those three things a lot. If anybody's been around me talking about email, those are kind of common things. So if these are all new to you, you can go look up tutorials on how to do all of it. The important thing is just, those three factors. So yeah, cool.
Absolutely. The one warning I'll quickly put in there as well, DKIM you can't really get wrong in a bad way. SPF or DMARC, if you get it wrong, your email's going to start going to spam.
Thanks for tuning in and Show Me the Nuggets. If you've been enjoying the podcast and find our content helpful, please visit our Apple Podcast page, hit the subscribe button, and leave us a review. Joe and the whole team have been working hard to bring more value to the show. Your feedback will go a long way in helping us make the show better and reach a wider audience.